what I wanted to start off with is I wanted you to go into another tab or a new window, and I want you to open up your LinkedIn profile. If you don't have a LinkedIn account, you can just kind of take notes along the way, but I do encourage you to look at your LinkedIn profile while we're talking, just because it's helpful. It allows you to reflect a little bit on what you can improve and what you can go back to. Just acknowledge in the chat window if you're able to log into your LinkedIn profile. I'll give you a minute to do so. Okay, so hopefully in another tab or in another window, you're in your LinkedIn profile. And again, I encourage you to do this because it's actually a really helpful exercise if you can look at some of these things in another window, if you can kind of either split your screen, or if you're on a really small laptop or on your phone and trying to access this, you can look at it at a different time. So just to introduce the session, it's about developing your strategy. So it's about attracting interest and branding yourself through cover letters and LinkedIn. We'll be talking about LinkedIn first, and we'll talk about cover letters second. And basically what we're hoping to do is to develop a consistent branding exercise throughout your LinkedIn profile, your cover letters. So when you go to introduce yourself to people, that you have something that connects with a message that you want to convey. So it's actually, it takes time to develop this, and it will actually be supported if you also develop an elevator pitch. You might have heard of that before. And again, if you have any questions throughout, feel free to put them in the chat window if anything is unclear, or if you can't hear me, or if you'd like me to speak a little bit closer or slower to the microphone, please let me know. And just to briefly introduce myself, my name is Stephanie Raible. I am currently coming from the States, so it is 9 a.m. here. So good morning, but good afternoon to most of you. And I am part of the Erasmus Mundus Association. I am currently one of the co-chairs of the Realize It initiative. So anything about entrepreneurial startups, from social causes to for-profit organizations, and also community things that help us support Emma and Oceans. Another thing I do is I'm also the chair of the Education Network, so if any of you are in the education field, please feel free to connect with me afterwards. And even if not, I'm always happy to meet new people. So it's nice to meet you all virtually and to see some of you again. So let's get started. The overview of this presentation is, first, we're going to talk about branding, because it's not worth your time to develop your LinkedIn profile and your cover letters if you don't know what you're going to tell people. So branding, what is it and why should you care? And then we're going to talk about LinkedIn profile development, and then translating that online persona that you've developed through LinkedIn and translating it onto paper, and how you should be formatting cover letters and things to consider as you're writing cover letters, and how to generate interest. So the last section that we'll go over is basically how, now that you have this brand, you have, this stellar LinkedIn profile, that, how do you get people to actually see it? How do you get people to notice you? And then we'll go for some Q&A. Please feel free to ask specific questions to your case. If you want me to look at your LinkedIn profile, we're a small enough group that you can just send me the link in the chat window if you have any specific questions. And again, don't be embarrassed to ask questions, because I'm sure that there's more than one of you that has a very similar question. So the next thing we're going to go over is branding. So I want you either on a separate tab, piece of paper, something like that that you have near you. And again, I can send you this presentation afterwards, or you can potentially download it from this system. This is actually very important, and it's a very important exercise because this is what everything is based off of. Based on how you use these things and how you deliver an identity, just look at who the network is of people that you're connecting to. I know a lot of people that opt to have a Twitter account and they connect to people they find professionally interesting, but then they have not much to say in a professional realm. They end up talking about what they're eating, what kind of coffee they're drinking, and that's really the type of thing that would get someone to not follow you anymore if it was supposed to be a professional connection. So just try to be mindful about how you're branding yourself through different media. The next thing is, how would people describe you now? So if you get any professional contacts that you're close with, or any friends that you're willing to kind of reflect with, get them to describe you. And this is a great exercise to see if what your initial questions in terms of how you were branding yourself in an inward way and how you were reflecting on yourself, does that connect with what other people are saying about you? For example, if you would describe yourself as an excellent communicator, but your coworker has told you that you're someone that doesn't have strong presentation skills, obviously those type of things aren't matching. And this is very common. It's very easy to do. So don't be afraid to be vulnerable and just ask people to give them your opinion, and then you can develop things and try to connect what you want people to think with you with how you are. So again, the next thing you would do from there is, if you want to strengthen the perception or change it. So now that you've collected feedback from close colleagues and friends in terms of what they think of you, in terms of your brand and who you are, you want to be able to know whether this is something that you want to strengthen or if you want to change it. In the example that I had provided before, in terms of you think that you're an excellent communicator, but your colleague actually thinks that you're a little awkward in public settings, that's obviously something you'd want to change. If you were in a situation where you felt like you were an excellent, say, programmer, and your colleague said that you're the top programmer in the firm, it would be something that you would want to strengthen this perception. You would actually want to go out and market that. And there are certain ways to do that, and we can talk about what would be good in your particular situation. For example, if you want to strengthen a perception, you could get that close colleague to write you a LinkedIn recommendation, which is essentially about 2 to 4 sentences that would just support your brand that you're hoping to deliver. So they would give a small recommendation, and that's a great way to strengthen a perception that's out there in terms of what you're hoping to brand. And again, how can you accomplish this? Coming up with a strategy is really important. So now that you know what people think about you, and you know whether it's something you want to strengthen this perception in terms of you want to market it out, or if you want to kind of change this and it's something you need to work on, the most important thing is to come up with a strategy of how to do this. Are you going to go into further training? Do you want to start posting and tweeting on a type of activity that you're doing? So again, you have to come up with a strategy of how you're going to accomplish this, and it's really unique to each person based off of the feedback that you're getting. The other thing to consider is, what gaps do you need to fill in your network? And this is a key question that a lot of people are missing. So we have our contacts that we've met in person. We tend to be very good about connecting with them on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter, but we often don't take the time to meet new people. And I would say within my own network, I'm missing some influential key people. I'm connected to a lot of people who are my age, but that doesn't necessarily have the ability to have a mentor. So I know within my network, I'm actually seeking people that could be a good mentor, people that are more advanced in their career that might be able to help lift me up. So what you need to do is, whenever you're looking at the social media that you use, or even just in your personal relationships, think about what kind of gaps you need to fill in your network. And this is actually very important, and it connects to branding in the way that once you've gotten a good sense from people close to you about what you've done, you know you have a strategy of what to do with this branding, You then need to start thinking about your network and how this branding message can be delivered and who it's missing. So again, you'll have a good sense of what's already out there, you'll know how to change it, and you'll have a future trajectory of how to develop that message moving forward. Okay, so those of you who have just joined us, welcome. So again, I invite you to use the chat window. If you have any questions throughout, I am happy to answer any questions that you have throughout the presentation. And those of you that came in a little bit late, I do encourage you in another window or tab, don't type it in the URL window here, but use another tab or window to open up your LinkedIn profile if you have a LinkedIn profile. If you don't, I highly encourage that you sign up for an account. I know most people end up having an account. Even if it's not something that you can easily access or use in your home country, I do encourage you to have it because it's a great static page. So when people Google you, it's one of the first things that usually comes up in the first page because it connects really well in a professional sense, especially if you're looking for work. Okay, so now that you're hopefully either looking at your LinkedIn profile or taking notes on this, we'll go into this section. Okay, so the first thing I recommend, and again, you don't have to do this step by step now. If you'd like to do it at a later time, that's absolutely fine. But one thing that you need to do first, and we're going to start from literally the top of your browser down for your LinkedIn profile. So you start with the URL. I know a lot of you have probably done this before, but if you haven't, there's something that's called a custom URL. So it would be linkedin.com/in/ and then you get to pick what your URL is. I do encourage that you select something with your name, either your full name. Mine, for example, is my first initial and my last name, and it will be on the last slide in case you'd like to connect. But I do encourage you to go through these steps and to create a custom URL because what this is good for is if you use it in your signature and your emails, you can also use it in business cards. And it would be really inconvenient to have www.linkedin.com/in/946H7. It really doesn't convey an easy message to people that you're trying to network with. So try to make it easy on them and just have it be your name. If you have a very common name, feel free to add numbers afterwards or to add your middle initial or any sort of thing that keeps it professional but memorable at the same time. Again, this is something that is anywhere from 5 to 6 letters or numbers, and you can't use special characters, so you can't use spaces or hyphens or periods or anything like that. And please note you can only change this 3 times in a 6-month span. If you end up changing this more than once, or more than those 3 times in a 6-month span, you'll get locked out. So just make sure to keep that in mind if you're kind of testing URLs and you're not really happy with yours. Feel free to do that. Again, if you're just joining us, feel free to open up your LinkedIn profile in a different tab and to move along as we go along. So now that you have a fantastic custom URL, I just wanted to point out that this presentation was actually drafted from 53 different sources. And yes, I did 53. I looked at 53 different websites, guidance books, things like that. And ones that I've really liked, I've decided to highlight. So this one is particularly from Forbes, and it's about developing your headline. So your headline is the catch-all that helps people know who you are in, I think it's only like 160 characters or something roughly around that. And what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to show that branding. So we went through the exercise of being able to reflect on your own passions, skills, what you can bring to the table, what you want people to think about you. You got other people to reflect on that and to tell you whether that's right or wrong. And now you have a whole branding strategy of what you're going to do and how you're going to get that branding. So now what you do with all that information is you show people what you want them to think of you. So, for example, if you do a variety of different things, say if you're if you're a consultant and a speaker and say an engineer at the same time, you want to put all three of those things down, because if someone is trying to find an engineer who's also a great public speaker to come in for a speaking event, you want to make sure that that branding is right up front so people are enticed to view your profile. Address your target audience. Oftentimes we have a target audience in mind. For example, if you're someone that wants to break into, say, academia, obviously you're probably not going to be targeting people that are perhaps within industry unless they're in a research capacity. So again, think about what audience you want to develop, and this really hones on that side of things in terms of what you're missing in your network and who's currently there. So again, your current network as well as what you hope to develop in the future, that's your target audience. Be specific. So again, within this, I encourage you to use spacers. You'll often see in some LinkedIn headers that you'll see a slash mark that is straight up and down. That's a great way to visually break up that, and allows you to be very specific and use keywords. And again, be creative. I've seen a lot of people use a full sentence kind of saying, say, for example, education student seeking fantastic opportunities. That's great, but it's not necessarily creative, nor is it specific. So kind of tweak it, get some advice from your friends. If you have one currently that you want us to kind of discuss out, feel free to put it in the chat window. Okay, moving down the page a bit. Your photo and name, and this might seem obvious, but I've seen tons of photos that are not really professional photos. And again, try to segment your social media usage to use, say, Facebook and/or Twitter or Pinterest or whatever you're interested in. Try to keep those for either social or professional in this segment, whether you're going to use them for social or professional purposes. But LinkedIn, keep it professional. It's one of these things that if you have a vacation photo, that's great, unless you're a travel writer or someone that needs to have a great cultural understanding within the job setting. That might not necessarily be the best picture. Also make sure it's recent. I can tell you that there have been times, recent and let's go on to the next one, before job hunt and after any appearance changes. Kind of piggybacking off of what I started to say, I've been to conferences before where you meet someone and all of a sudden you go back to try to find them on LinkedIn and they look nothing like your picture. So it's something that you're actually thinking, is this actually the person I met? They have a completely different hair color. They had long red hair and now they have short blonde hair. Is this even the same person? For men, it's if you grow out your facial hair, you could look like a completely different person. So try not to confuse people, make it simple, and make sure that you take a new photo if your appearance has significantly changed, and try to keep it recent within a 1 to 2 year time span. Another important thing to do, now that you have a good sense of your brand, that photo should reinforce the brand. If you want to be known for someone who is a really great connector and motivator, and someone who inspires people and gets them to really act, you might want to have a picture where you're smiling, or it could even be a more distant picture where you're interacting with someone. Again, that could be definitely seen as professional because it reinforces your brand. If you want to be known as someone who's very serious, someone who is scholarly, it might want to have a more subdued tone because you're not trying to emphasize a more social side of your brand, but more of an intellectual side of your brand. So another thing to consider is oftentimes we go by many names. Like, for example, my name is Stephanie Raible. People might know me as Steph instead of Stephanie. So what you can do is you might want to make this simple on people for searching you. Basically, within a search, you can put these names in. I gave an example of one of my friends who is named Shulan, actually goes by the name Lana, but she also goes by Lainey. So here are different variations of how you could write your name in the name side of things. If you'd rather have your name be less complicated, there is kind of a hack that you can do that you can put a variation of your name or other names, or if you're someone that says, say, has two last names, you can put any misspellings or variations of your name within the summary section. So for example, we'll go over the summary section, I think next, within the next slide or two. But what you can do at the bottom is you could put also known as Margaret, Maggie, and you could do the various spellings of Maggie. So if you're someone that, if your name is Maggie Smith, but people might look you up as Margaret instead, they might misspell your name because if you introduce yourself as Maggie, they don't know which variation you're going to use. Or again, if you go by, say, an English name and kind of a native country name, it's something that you want people to be able to search you. So consider this if you have multiple names or if you have kind of a variation of your name that people often misspell. Okay, so now that we're in this spot, I wanted to introduce something from TED. And if you haven't seen TED Talks, I really encourage you to look at them. I think many people have seen them at this point. There was something I saw a few years ago, and it's a talk from 2009. His name is Simon Sinek, and he goes over the golden circle. And he basically says that people are going about generating interest in the complete wrong way. Oftentimes we go over what and how, and sometimes we'll go over why, and we'll do it in that order. So for example, if I'm going over a what, how, why about myself, I could say I am an educator who spans from birth to lifelong learning, and I do this by engaging in different facets in education. So I work in nonprofits and I work in higher education as well. You know, that's fine, but it's a little dull. So what I encourage you to do within your summary is to go from the why to the how to the what. So why is really, it connects to your first reflection, your inward reflection, kind of what motivates you, what really makes you passionate. So if I was to go from why to how to what, I would then introduce myself by saying, I'm a passionate educator who tirelessly works on projects, and I engage in a variety of different projects within nonprofits and higher education. And I do this in a way that I've worked for, say, 9 years. It gives people, it entices them because they now feel like they know a little bit more about you, kind of what motivates you, what you're passionate about. So again, when you're writing your summary, and again, summaries should not be paragraphs and paragraphs. It probably should be something that is closer, maybe from 3 to 5 sentences maximum. Try to keep it 3 to 4 if you can. Start with a why sentence, what you're passionate about, what motivates you, then go to how you do this, I mean how you engage in things, and then what you do. And it sounds counterintuitive, but just give it a try. Simon Sinek says this because people don't buy what you do, but why you do it. And he gives the example of Apple, and Apple gives this message that they're passionate about creativity and quality. And that's a why statement. And they hook you by saying that. And then they tell you that they sell computers. Obviously, they sell computers. I feel like the what statement is kind of the obvious statement, but the why hooks people in. So what I encourage you to do is to figure out your why and support it by shaping and allow it to shape your brand. So there's an exercise that will help you through this. So when you're doing why, answer why you've chosen your current profession, or what motivates you, and where do you lose your time. So when I ask where do you lose your time, it's the kind of thing that, say for example, if you're passionate about graphic editing, you might be able to spend hours and hours and look at the clock and feel like 5 minutes have passed. So you lose your time in this activity. So again, where do you lose your time? Why have you chosen this? Give people a why statement. Use the next sentence to say how. How do you produce quality work? How do you work best? So are you someone that loves to work in teams? you produce quality work because you engage with different types of clients, and then give us what you do in one sentence. And again, this is for your summary statement. You can, it kind of pilots out the 3 sentences that you would have to do. Okay, before we go into the translating online to paper side, does anybody have any questions? If not, just write no in the chat window. Okay, fantastic. It's also good to see that people are still here. Yes, I can, Deanna, I will send you, let me think, I will send you a few things. I don't consider myself to be a great example, but on the very last slide, it will have mine. I don't think it's perfect yet, but I've actually had seminars with people that work at LinkedIn, and they've vetted saying it's in the complete right format. So just for lack of having a lot of, I guess, exposure to this type of format, you're happy, like I'd be happy if you looked at mine. Again, please critique it. It's not perfect by any means, but I can tell you that people that speak professionally on LinkedIn or work in LinkedIn have read my summary before. This is apparently a hobby that's gone too far. But I will, yeah, thank you. I hate self-promoting, but in a way, it has been vetted, so I can at least give you that. So now that you have that message, a good online profile, you feel like, yes, I can share this with the world. Oftentimes, employers, their first interaction with you is not actually online, it's on paper. So in order to make sure that you're conveying the right message, you need to take that branding and to figure out how to put it on paper. So we're going to talk a lot about kind of do's and don'ts with cover letters and more of formatting and how you would do that. But that's considering that you kind of already have a good sense of brand. I'll try to tie it in as we go along, though. So from Business Insider, they have a good bunch of tips. And do mind that there are 2 4s in here. I do know how to count. There are 8. But I just added 1 along the way. So keep it short. So with cover letters, we have the tendency that we want to tell them everything and why we would be perfect for them and why we're why we have the right skills for the job. Be mindful that people are really going to only give you about 10 to 15 seconds when they're reviewing your cover letter. Sometimes they have a pile of hundreds of applications, and they're briefly either going through the pile of applications, whether it's on the computer screen or a literal pile of applications. Make sure that it's something that you keep short. And to the second point, take your reader's interest immediately. Again, I don't consider myself to be a very forward person. Recently, within the last couple of years, when I got the job that I have now, I ended up having a really direct statement saying that within my first sentence, I hinted to the fact that I'm the perfect person for this job and I have everything that you're looking for. Now, culturally speaking, that doesn't always work in every context, but if you figure out within the cultural context of how to hook your reader's interest, what do you think they're looking for? What do you think they would want to know? And be confident in how you approach it. So the third one is basically pick 2 to 3 job description skills and demonstrate that you have them. So most jobs that are posted obviously have a job description. When you go through and you're reading it and they're asking someone who knows how to do this, someone who has these kind of skills, try to figure out which 2 to 3 you think would be the most compelling things that you could present to the job, and then demonstrate how you have them. Like, for example, if I'm trying to claim that I have good presentation skills, I could say I've presented in this forum. I've also had the opportunity to facilitate this discussion, to give webinars, and I'm very comfortable with all sorts of media. So I've just explained in just a couple of sentences that I have good technology skills. I'm comfortable with public speaking. I have facilitation skills, which is a little bit different in terms of being able to incorporate ideas as well. So within, you can take in Mary skills, and take about 2 to 3, and within the paragraphs demonstrate how you have them, and we'll kind of go into where that would be within the cover letter. Be quantitative. If you have the ability to say that you've increased sales by 30% within your company, do so. Be as quantitative as you can. I know that's oftentimes hard, and sometimes it's reinforced within your resume or CV, but highlight it. If you've won an award at your work, or say even within your alumni organization, flaunt it. These are things that you should be proud of. So try to be quantitative and very specific. Don't rehash your CV or resume. So for our second number 4, don't go over everything that's in your CV or resume. They obviously have that document as well. Don't tell them word for word saying, I went from this job and I went from this job and then I did this and then I went there. They don't need to know how that connects yet. If they interview you in person, they'll ask you, tell me about yourself or tell me about your career. They'll have you walk it through. The resume or CV is supposed to show them that sequence. The cover letter is really supposed to gain your interest and show that you, in just a few paragraphs, have the kind of skills and you can demonstrate that to them. So think about skills more than your job history. If you can address the cover letter to the hiring manager or recruiter, imagine that you're walking down the street and there's someone that is yelling your name. Obviously, it's kind of hard to ignore that. If someone's saying, hey, you, it's easier to ignore. Even if they're looking straight at you and you know that they're calling to you, if they're saying, hey, you, look over here, they can ignore you a lot easier. If someone addresses the cover letter by name, all of a sudden you kind of turn around and you're like, oh, how did you know it was me? In a way, it also shows that you did your research. They might think that you have an inside connection to the company. They're going to keep reading. So if you have the ability to address the cover letter to the hiring manager rather than human resources or a generic staff, please do so. And again, match that cover letter tone with the company culture. If it's a really innovative company, if it's a young company, try to have a more young, fresh tone to your cover letter. If it's something that, again, is more of an academic setting, more traditional, try to keep that tone consistent with your audience. And proofread. I think it's pretty obvious that you need to proofread. I've actually made the mistake of having errors within my cover letter. And I went into an interview and I saw that someone had circled in red the error. And I'm not kidding. This did happen. And I remember looking down during the interview and thinking, I now need to convince this person that I am someone who is meticulous, and it's very hard to convince them of that if I've sent them a document that they've already marked up. So first impressions are important, so make sure that you're not giving them a message that you don't want to convey from the start. So from Yale, I actually came up across this website, and it was actually really helpful. So this is how you would introduce yourself in the first paragraph. Again, we're trying to keep this brief. It's only supposed to be about 3 to 4 paragraphs, and it's only a page. I know within some circles, like in academic circles, it's fine to continue a cover letter onto 2 pages. But at the same time, you really want to keep it to 1 page. I would say most industries, it's a page or even like a 3/4 of a page, a half page, something that is really quick and easy to read. So within the first paragraph, you're supposed to introduce yourself, make a connection, summarize your strengths, and make sure it's well written. So within this first paragraph, you're taking that sense of personal brand, you're putting it in, you're summarizing those strengths, and you're trying to hook them in. So again, trying to have something that keeps their interest. And think about these kind of why, how, what statements that you can do when you're introducing yourself. So be creative in that sense. Within the middle paragraph or paragraphs, and I do emphasize you can keep it to a 3-paragraph intro, middle, final paragraph. But if you feel like it's something that you need to separate out the two paragraphs, you can do so. Within the middle paragraph or paragraphs, don't restate your resume. I'm emphasizing that again. Explain how the experiences on your resume demonstrate your qualifications. So again, it's skill-based. So take the experiences that you've had, whether they're academic experiences, volunteer experiences, internships, work experience, and try to figure out how to pull out the most compelling skills that will get them to say, okay, this person's qualified, maybe we should push them to an interview. This is your time to elaborate. So once you say, you can't just say, I have great communication skills. You have to be able to say, I have great communication skills. I've either won this an award for my ability to connect and bridge people. I've been invited to present at this conference. You have to give an example of the skills that you're saying that you have. Talk about occasions where you use them. And again, use this opportunity. And if you don't want to have a full paragraph, you can even bullet these opportunities if you're working within an industry that would support as such. So again, if you want to bullet these things, saying, you know, I have great communication skills. Here's how I did them. I have great, say, computer skills or technology skills, and this is what I know how to do. Try to find a way to demonstrate the skills that you think are going to be most compelling to that employer. And then all throughout this, try to read this by thinking, what can you bring to the position employer? That's what the reader is wanting to know from these middle paragraphs. They're going to skim and try to see what you can bring to it. So even if you want to put in bold your skills, it allows them to kind of skim and to see what kind of things that you can present to them. So in the final paragraph, you're supposed to reiterate your interest in the employer and the position. Again, they want people that want to work with them. So if you can just reiterate the fact that you're really interested, that you've been following their company for years, and you think it would be a great fit between you and the position, and focus on next steps. So request an interview. Say, I will follow up with this contact. And I hope to hear from you soon. You know, something that gives a bridge, saying, you know, we're going to be in touch. It allows the reader just to know that you're interested and that you will follow up, or that you expect to follow up from them. And again, close it off and end it at one page. Okay, so get active and visible. So this is something that is our final step. So once you have this personal brand, you have it online, you now know how to convey it on paper, you need that visibility. You need the ability to have people notice you. So this is actually important online and in person. So keep your social media professional. Again, if you like to use Facebook as a social setting, I personally do. I don't use it for professional reasons that frequently. So keep it separated. Use LinkedIn only for professional purposes. Don't talk about like what kind of food you're eating or anything like that. Save that for the right audience. I encourage you to start blogging, and it doesn't have to be really long blogs. It could be something like you read a news article, or you share a news article, or you comment on something that's happening in the news. So again, start a blog, or use Twitter or something that shows that you're engaged within your field. And it also shows your expertise and voice. Another important thing to do is to join LinkedIn groups, and this is kind of a nice hack to access people. So say, for example, you want to get in touch with someone who is a preferred employer that you've been seeking out for a while. Find out where the hiring manager of a particular position, find out what groups they're in, join those groups, and then all of a sudden you can actually introduce yourself to that person without kind of paying LinkedIn or using one of your LinkedIn kind of in messages. Then connect and follow with influential and interesting people. So whether it's on Twitter or on LinkedIn, make sure to connect with people you find interesting. Don't feel afraid to introduce yourself to people, and don't forget to network in person as well. Oftentimes we are so focused in on our online persona that we forget that the in-person connection is actually a little bit stronger. So make sure to do that. Any questions? I see Deanna has a question. That's a good question. I am guilty of using that that intro phrase, Deanna. So I'm probably not not the best example in that sense. But when you introduce yourself, you can use that same statement that you've developed within your summary statement. So you can say, you know, I'm writing about this position because hiring managers actually do care about that first sentence. They care because it shows them where you found the job. So I'm writing to you today because I came across a job description for a business analyst, and I was referred to this position through your website. This allows the employer to, or the hiring manager, to know how you found them, whether it was through a current employee, whether it was through their website direct, or if it was through, like, say, a monster.com or Monster, or jobs website, general jobs website. Then you can use that second sentence to introduce yourself, saying, I found this job through X or Y website. Um, I'm a passionate communicator who has had the opportunity to present at 16 different conferences within the last 3 years, et cetera, et cetera. So you've told them that you're passionate about communication, that you're considering quality, you've explained how, and kind of the what side of things, even within one sentence. So again, use that first sentence. I know the first sentence is kind of a wash, but it's a formality that just says, I'm writing to you because of X or Y reason, and then you can introduce yourself. So again, you can keep the first paragraph fairly short. You can still keep to 3 or 4 sentences, and still have the opportunity to introduce yourself. So don't worry about making that first sentence something that hooks them in. You can use it in the second sentence, and because they're really going to be skimming for the most part anyway. Does anybody else have any other questions, or Deanna, did I answer your question? Yes. So putting your contact details at the end, say, are you talking about a cover letter? Like if you're emailing a cover letter and you have your contact details at the end as well? Yep. Still do it, because I'll tell you why. They might print out that piece of paper. It might be an administrative assistant who's initially taking your email, but someone else will be reading it. So for example, if they either print it out and give it to someone who's on the committee to make the decision, or if it's something that they send them, like they email them a stack of resumes, like say they'll send 10 people stuff that has come in today to the hiring manager. It would be something that's very important to put your email at the end and phone number. Don't forget to do that, even if it's redundant, even if you feel like it is, even if you know that you're emailing the person who would be calling you directly back. Make it as easy as possible for them to contact you. So if they're reading the letter, you want them to be able to pick up the phone or to send you an email automatically without fishing for your information. Um, Yes, finding out a specific name to address it to is actually, it's pretty sneaky. Within larger companies, it's sometimes hard to find a staff directory or list. What I've done on a few times is I've Googled the title name of the person. Like for example, if you know the title of, say if you want to be a business analyst within the marketing, I don't know if this is actually a business term, bear with me here, within a marketing department. So you could say, I want to work for ABC Company and I want to work in the marketing department. Let me Google ABC Company Marketing Director or Vice President of Marketing. Try to look up those configurations to see if you can either find something on LinkedIn or to find something online. Generally. So I actually remember where I had to cold contact a few people, so I had no idea who they were. And I remember I was trying all sorts of configurations on LinkedIn, and although I couldn't connect with them on LinkedIn because we weren't close enough in our kind of connections from each other that I was unable to send a direct message, I was at least able to get the person's contact information. Again, it doesn't have to be right. It doesn't have to be the exact person. If you want to err on the side of being a little cautious, do someone that is the head of the office. Like, for example, if you can't find who the director of marketing is, but you can find the VP of communications and marketing is kind of under his purview, address that person. The hiring manager is not going to be offended by it. You're still mentioning someone who's within the organization, who's kind of in the management sphere. So again, don't be afraid to use the wrong person's name. If you use anybody that even that hiring manager is familiar with within their department or their boss, it still gets their attention that you took the time to know something about the company and their staff. Any more questions? Yes. It's a great question. So Elena was asking about internships, that they often don't say what they're looking for. They're like, okay, here's an internship for someone who's going to be, say, a volunteer manager or something like that for a nonprofit. So if you're managing volunteers for a nonprofit, they don't always give you a list of skills that they're looking for. A lot of times you have to extrapolate what kind of skills you think they might be looking for. So again, it's kind of not as direct as you want it to be. If it's something that you will be doing research, emphasize your experience with research. So if it's something like you will be doing reporting and working with a lot of data, talk about your research skills, any sort of fellowship that you've been given for research, any volunteer work that you did. If it's, say, managing volunteers, like the other example I gave, talk about your interpersonal skills, how you've worked with people, if you've managed people before, either in a work or volunteer setting, any leadership ability. So again, it's not always clear, and sometimes you're applying to an organization rather than a specific department, in which case emphasize the skills that you think are generic enough to get you an interview. Like, for example, if you're applying to work with World Bank, but you don't necessarily get to specify what kind of department you're working in, you might want to just generically talk about some of the skills that you think are the strongest that you have. That might be compelling for a lot of different departments. Like, so if you have great intercultural communication skills, you're used to working with very diverse groups of people, you're someone that is great within teams as well as autonomous. Like, these are generic skills that help you translate yourself across settings. So you could have great intercultural skills if you're someone who's publicly facing, as well as if you're working within any sort of diverse team, even doing research or data work. So again, a lot of it is just guessing work, but what you could do in that sense is just to try to anticipate what kind of skills you think that organization would want you to have, just enough so you can get an interview, and then you can try to, within the interview, read them a little bit more. Otherwise, if you can go on LinkedIn and find people that have previously done an internship with that group or a fellowship or any sort of thing that you're having a hard time finding the skills for, try to find people that were former interns. And then ask them, introduce yourself to them, say, yeah, I thought your background was really interesting. I wanted to connect with you, and ask you more about your experiences within, say, the World Bank. Would you be willing to speak with me? Again, don't be afraid to reach out to people. And again, if you're afraid to reach out to the hiring manager, find other people on LinkedIn who have done similar things like internships or the same type of position that you're applying for. Again, it's flattering to be contacted on LinkedIn, especially if you personalize your contact with them. To say, I noticed that you were formerly an intern. I'm having a difficult time trying to figure out what kind of skills they'd be looking for, and I want to see if I'm a good match. Would you mind speaking with me about your experiences? So again, don't be afraid to reach out to people if you feel like you're at a stopping point. Yeah. Valentina was asking about contacting recruiters on LinkedIn and what kind of information you can ask them. So recruiters are tricky. It's a great question because a lot of recruiters hate being contacted on LinkedIn because they will get contacted by, 50 people in a day in some companies that are more popular. So say for Google, if someone's in human resources or any sort of recruiting type position, they get contacted all the time. And it's almost a wash that you even contact them, try to reach out. I would still encourage it. You may never hear back from them, but if you customize your message, take a few minutes to say, to mention something about them, the company. You never know. Some recruiters are friendlier than others, but they'll entertain it and send you a thanks, or they'll connect with you. Others will just ignore all contacts. So again, if you can either find a way to connect with them, try to feel free to reach out to them. Otherwise, what you can do in a way to connect with a lot of recruiters is to make sure that your LinkedIn keywords are correct. Like, for example, if you want a job that is doing, let's see, working for a for-profit or an international agency, you want to make sure within your summary statement to have a lot of language that involves international skills or intercultural skills, because recruiters do use LinkedIn to find people. It's been a little bit odd within the last year. I've gotten more contact from recruiters than ever, and I think a part of that is really honing the LinkedIn profile and getting some good skill equations. Also, you guys might know about endorsements. They have these skills that you can select from, and then your contacts can endorse these skills. I initially thought that was a really useless exercise, that you're like, okay, these aren't even recommendations. What are these? Those are actually really good for search terms. If someone ends up trying to find someone who, say, has worked in a certain area before, they will look up that skill. And if you have a lot of your contacts that have endorsed you for that skill, you're going to be further up the list in terms of where they would find you. So recruiters do use that as well. So if you're having a hard time getting them to respond to you directly, try to just better your LinkedIn profile in terms of getting people to endorse you for certain skills, to recommend you, to use certain keywords that you think they might look for, and then hopefully they'll find you at some point. Do you guys have any other questions? Any other thoughts on? You guys are asking really fantastic questions. I know that it can be a daunting process to start the personal branding, to start working on your LinkedIn profile. And we often think that we have a good LinkedIn profile and we want to keep it as is. No, use this opportunity, like take a half hour, 20 minutes today just to look back at your LinkedIn profile and to change some of these things. Even if you give yourself a custom URL that you can use on business networking cards, you already kind of made yourself a little bit more marketable. So again, if you want to connect with me, I'd love to meet you and to get to know you a little bit better. And I'm happy to give you any sort of recommendations offline, off this webinar. Again, here's my LinkedIn profile with my custom URL, SRAIBLE. And that's my name, Stephanie Raible. And thank you again, and thank you for your attention, and have a wonderful afternoon. Or if you're like me, kind of in the Eastern time zone or in the Americas, good morning.